As the host of a podcast that dives into personal journeys and spiritual insights of individuals from all walks of life, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dalen Canlin, a man whose story is a testament to the transformative power of faith and vulnerability. In this episode, I want to share with you the profound lessons and experiences that Dalen brought to our conversation, which I believe can resonate with many of you.
God is love. Like
Yeah.
if you could talk with God right now, and I believe we can, like in prayer, like that is what you would
Mm-hmm.
feel, be like the
Yeah.
full essence of love, and believe he's our living.
This is Sheila's Take, a podcast where you can hear my take on everything: love, hate, relationships, family, and today's issues with a godly perspective. I'm your host, Sheila Dunbar. Thank you for joining me. Hello, and welcome back to Sheila's Take. I have a special guest today on Sheila's Take, Dalen Canlin. With a passion for sports, running, and a profound belief in trusting God, Dalen brings a unique perspective to the show. His personal journey of self discovery, faith, and embracing vulnerability has equipped him with invaluable insights that have the power to uplift and transform lives. With his podcast, Yield Today with Dalen Candlin, his book of poetry titled God is Trying to Talk to Me, Dalen is devoted to helping people develop a stronger connection to God and encouraging them to place their trust in his plans. By sharing his journey of vulnerability and inviting others to tell God everything, he exemplifies the power of faith in experiencing miraculously transformations. I am privileged to have Dalen as our honored guest on Sheila's Take, prepared to be captivated as he shares his story of personal growth, trusting God, and the extraordinary power of embracing vulnerability. Welcome, Dalen. How are you?
Things are great, Sheila. I'm super thankful and just glad that I'm on this journey, I'm on this path, and I really feel that God has brought this moment together. So I'm thankful for it.
Read your story, and it was so beautiful how you have transformed in the years that you come out of school to now. Can you share more about your personal journey and struggling with self acceptance and the impact it had on your life?
Yeah, I think it's a developing puzzle because we are all a certain way and we're learning things about ourselves
Mm-hmm.
as we go along. And so I found out I had ADHD when I was 20, and that was a
Oh,
very
wow.
important piece of the puzzle that we didn't know about until I was 20
Wow.
and until a lot of things fell apart. And I met with somebody who's like, yeah, man, I think you have ADHD. And then as I've come to understand that a little bit, and then when I
Mm-hmm.
kind of did a nosedive a little bit towards the end of college and just not making space for that, and that led to a lot of struggles. But
Mm-hmm.
now that as I've come up, it's the ADHD that is a lot of it, is that I can hyper focus. I get super focused on things. I'll get super lost in
Okay.
conversation, and that's a big part of it. But look at when I was younger and playing a lot of Pokemon and memorizing all the Pokemon's names, memorizing when
Mm-hmm.
they all evolved, memorize when they learned different moves. It's like that's stuff that like most people weren't figuring out, like didn't know that stuff, but I just would
Right.
just memorize it really easily. And so for whatever reason my brain has developed or been brought up in that way. I can memorize things super easily, and the ADHD is a big part of it. But I think that is where a lot of it kind of starts, is getting a better idea of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
because understanding who I am has given me a lot better understanding of, okay, like this job where I am going to have my soul sucked from me, and I mean that literally, like where I would be working and then they'd be like, hey, you need to be, make sure you look busy or something, like
Yeah.
that will suck away my creative soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important to know that I'm probably going to be something more on the creative, strategic, etc. side. That's
Mm-hmm.
where I'll find fulfillment, as opposed to something else, and how I'm not for everybody and how I'm not
Yeah.
for every job. That is where the freedom begins, is when you get to understand yourself.
How did this realization lead you to incorporate God in the process?
So my parents have taught me from a real young age that God loved me and was aware of me. And
Mhm.
I keep thinking of this story, and I've never shared it on a podcast. And it's not like a big story, but I had these red shoes I really liked. I was 9. I remember losing them and just looking all over the place. And my mom being like, "Yeah, you can pray and you'll find them." And this obviously doesn't always happen. But
Mhm.
I prayed. I was like, God, I really want to find these shoes. And can you help me find them? And then I just like got up and I felt better and I just went out and found them, you know? And so it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
it's a beautiful little moment. And so I've had those experiences. And I've also had times like when I didn't make the basketball team in high school and where I was like being the manager and I was moving the camera back and forth. I just felt this peace in my soul, like how God was completely aware of me. And I wasn't like I had to be on the basketball court to please him. Like he was completely chilling with me just moving the camera. It's like, it's
Yeah.
all good. Like we're all doing a great work. We can all help out.
Mhm.
And he knows where we can make the biggest impact. And so sometimes things fall apart and sometimes things come together that you didn't expect.
I mean, most times, God will put us where we're needed the most. And we may not feel that that's where we belong because in our heads, we have something else, this is where we want to be. But God always knows what's best for us. And He puts us where we're needed the most. I've learned that. Um, in your bio, you mentioned the importance of trusting God and the miracles He can provide. Can you elaborate? Is there a specific experience or moment where your trust in God led you to um, this a profound transformation or a miracle in your life? You're smiling. I know there's something. There's
Oh,
something.
there's literally so many. That's what I'm saying is like when you start to trust him, like the little stupid stuff that nobody else will talk with
Yeah.
you about, like you will start to understand like God really does care about all these silly, dumb little things that nobody else will talk to you about.
Yeah.
When I was 15 years old, me and my friends made some video game videos and we just recorded a camera pointed at our TV and we just talked and had our own little banter and stuff, and it was fun. And there was this one bigger Nintendo channels, like 160,000 subscribers maybe,
Mhm.
and they did this thing where they'd spotlight different channels that were up and coming, and we had our camera quality. And it was back in the day where you could make video responses on YouTube videos. You can't do that anymore, but
Mhm.
so I sent in some video responses. I just kind of kept doing it. And then one day, lo behold, I got home from school and the thumbnail for that up and coming people that they shouted out was one of the games we were playing, which is Mario Kart 64. And I clicked on it. I was like, there's no way. And there was our channel. And you look at our subscribers and it's starting to go up. And I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Really?
whoa. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Like, what is happening? And it
Wow.
stopped after getting like 26 new ones. And I was like, you know what? That's okay. It was like, it was
Yeah.
camera quality. It was 2012. It's like, and I'm exaggerating obviously a little bit. It wasn't like I
Mhm.
looked at it immediately, it was just going up, but it was like 26 in the next day
Yeah.
or so, which was
Mhm.
around double what we had at that time or a little bit more. And the miracle of it, Sheila, so there's one person who subscribed to that whose name was Miguel. He was living in Venezuela when he found our channel. He didn't speak much English.
Mhm.
And then 2 years later, when I went to leave on a mission trip, I found out that he had watched every single video. He had learned a pretty good amount of English from hearing us speak English.
Wow. Wow.
And he also had moved from Venezuela to Florida, where he was in around a lot of gangs and stuff. And he said, but you guys had such a good presence in your videos. I never got into any of that stuff.
Oh,
So
wow.
for me, that was a miracle. And if God
Yeah.
wants to do a one person miracle
Mhm.
through some silly thing like video game videos, then fine.
Yeah.
And I still keep in touch with him. I haven't heard from him in a while, but like we're
Mhm.
still like we've talked a lot. Like the gaming channel season is over, which is kind of hard for me to accept because there's still an audience that would be like, oh yeah, let's do it. Oh, let's run it back. But
Listen, my
it's like
son, please, my son, that's what he's doing right now.
I love talking about it. I mean, it's amazing. Like for me, it was a lot of the speaking. Like I did
Mhm.
hundreds of videos, just me. Like my very first take on a video, I was 15 and
Mhm.
I used this camera and just used the audio that the camera recorded. I didn't have a microphone. And yeah, that's how it started. And then you
Sounds
do like
so-
20 takes of that and it starts sounding almost okay. And then you just, I remember like the 4 or 5 times in, I was like, I kind of like this. I kind of like
Yeah.
just talking and playing and,
Mhm.
and it's been really neat how that journey has happened. But that was definitely one, because if I had not kept sending in that video, then maybe would have never reached Miguel. I don't know,
Right.
you know?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I think it was probably the 10th or 11th time sending in a video that it went through. And the craziest part too is there's these doors that we don't know how long they're open, Sheila.
Mhm.
So the Ninja Buzz Spotlight, I think we were on number 25. I think they only had 12 more. So
Mhm.
like, and then it completely shut down. They decided we're not doing this anymore. So like, if I hadn't kept sending those in,
Yeah.
the timing, like that's where it gets
Yeah.
crazy. Is yeah, it's like you just got to keep putting yourself out there. So I'm just really thankful for that, because there's a lot of beautiful memories and stuff from that. So
Hmm. Now you have a podcast called Yield Today with Dallin Canlin, and it focuses on helping people be more vulnerable with God. Can you explain why vulnerability is crucial in our relationship with God and how it impacts our lives? How it can impact our lives?
yeah, so the podcast started with an acronym I came up with for the word yield, and it stands for yes, sign, vision, love, demonstrated. And I believe that is really how we will get to where we want to be, is
Mm-hmm.
to envision God or another person, having love and consideration for us. If we're feeling like we can't talk to somebody about something important, it's good to remember, especially if that person already has a history of being kind to
Mm-hmm.
us, that they're going to listen to us and they're going to not look at us any different. They're going to be glad that we opened up to them. And
Yeah.
so the podcast has gone through a lot of different evolutions, as have I. But yeah, right now it's really just going really deep on trusting God, being vulnerable with Him. But it has gone through some more of the self-help, productivity, that kind of
Yeah.
wave, and just interviewed a lot of different people that I was interested to talk to, and it's been fun.
Your writings and speaking engagements are aimed at inspiring others to trust in what God is doing in their lives. Can you provide some steps that individuals can take to cultivate trust in God? I mean, especially like now with everything going on during time, we have times of uncertainty and a lot of struggle. What are some practical advice or steps that, they can really take?
I think the first thing is just God is going to meet you where you're at. So you have
Hmm.
to accept where you're at, because He is going to help you exactly where you're at right now. And just to tell Him about that kind of stuff, because that is how I was able to get the book out. The book is
Yeah.
it's a fruit of clarity. It's a fruit of love. It's a fruit of really sticking with it, and being
Hmm.
okay with where I was at, and just putting this out there. And so I think that's the first thing, accepting where you're at. And then two, just kind of putting yourself out there, doing some things to kind of help yourself get in a better place. For me, this looked like showing up. Like with the gaming YouTube channel, we had 100 videos out in the first, like within the first year. And I was
Hmm.
editing and stuff after high school, and I was doing track at the time. And it's like, you make time, because I really
Yeah.
wanted God to do a miracle in me and also through the channel. So just showing up and setting that intention and sticking with it. And then that'd be the last thing would just be sticking with it, and
Yeah.
knowing that, there will be a great harvest of some kind, and you just continue to trust God with it wherever He leads you with it. You talked a little bit about the Jonah thing, about just trusting Him and going for it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
how He's got things prepared. Even if we all will be afraid. I know I've definitely had times like, no, there's no way I'm doing that. No way in the world. Like, get out of my head. Like, there's no way you're actually telling me to do that.
Yeah.
And He has things prepared, and He has things on the other side. I think of Esther and how she went and was
Yeah.
willing to go and talk to the king, and she didn't know how that was going to fly. And the general rule was that if you went to the king uninvited, you were going to
You're
get
gonna, yeah,
killed.
you're gonna get
Yeah.
killed. Yes, yes,
So she
definitely.
fasted and she did all this stuff. And yes, I think that'd just be the first 3 steps: accepting where you're at, putting yourself out there in
Hmm.
some way, getting out of your comfort zone, keeping small commitments to yourself. I wanted to say that earlier, but keeping small commitments to yourself goes a really long way. And then just being patient with the journey, and how it's really more about direction than speed
Mm-hmm.
too. Like if you're going just like this, or even just like this, like you're going somewhere way better than if you're just like zooming
Right.
back and forth there.
Your journey has led you to the creation of beautiful poetry that lifts the soul. And your book, God is Trying to Talk to Me. One of the poems I fell in love with because I read it, and it was I cried with her. Can you talk about a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, definitely. Was going to go to Podfest in Orlando, and I'd
Hmm.
never been to Orlando before, but I was really excited. And remember getting off the plane and walking, and I always try to be open for anything because
Hmm.
anything can happen, and it can happen really quickly. And so I was just walking through Orlando, and I think it was right around like 4 p.m. maybe, and I knew I needed to be at my hotel by like 8 p.m.
Hmm.
ish. And so I knew I needed to get an Uber in between then and 8 p.m. And I never used an Uber before.
Oh.
I was kind of stressed about that. Like, how's that going to go?
Hmm.
Et cetera, et cetera. And I remember just walking around, and I saw this lady sitting on the ground, and she had this sweatshirt that says like, I am fearless or something to that
Hmm.
effect. And I walked by her, and I just kind of felt like I should say something, but I was like, I don't know what to say. And I was
Hmm.
like, I'm not doing it. And then I walked past her again, and then I just kind of like walked up to her, and I just kind of said, it's kind of difficult to be fearless though sometimes, isn't it? And I just kind of said something and
Hmm.
said I liked her sweatshirt, and she just started crying, and she
Hmm.
said, things are really difficult right now, and I definitely am being tested, and I don't like any of this that's happening in my life right now. And I just was like, the Uber can wait. Who cares about Uber? I don't care about Uber at all.
Wow,
I can
wow.
walk to my hotel for all I
Hmm.
care. This person needs somebody to talk to. And
Yeah.
so I just kind of learned that. I put down all my stuff. I think that's a metaphorical thing. It's like we take it all off. Like
Hmm.
I don't need any of this right now. I'm just going to be completely with this person. So I put down all my stuff. I just kind of sat down. She's sitting down, and I'm just kind of sitting down next to her, and I just started talking with her about the word and about trusting God and his promises. And I really tried to listen to where she was at.
Hmm.
I won't go into it, but
Right,
it's just
right.
she's having some difficulties. And I was able to hear her by some beautiful, great
Hmm.
miracle. I was able to listen and just kind of help her say what needed to be said. And she's like, I really think God put you in my path today. I really think that you're an angel for me. And I'm like, that's really beautiful. And then yeah, I just kind of stayed with her as long as I needed to be there. And so I think I was there for about 2 hours. We just kind of talked
Oh.
and read scriptures, and she shared with me more and more. We just kind of sat there as long as I needed to be there. And there's a couple times where I was like, okay, this is fun. And I was like getting ready to leave, but I just kind of felt like I needed to stay, or something else would come to mind, another scripture,
Yeah,
another
yeah.
thought, and that channel is still open. There's still things flowing. And so I
Hmm.
stayed with her. And then we said a prayer together. She's like, well, I want to keep in touch with you. Can I get your phone number? And I was like, sure. And then it's interesting, Sheila, because 2 months later, I was having some different struggles, and I talked with her on the phone, and it was great. And we still
Wow.
talk on the phone here and there.
Wow,
And
look at
it,
that.
it gets even better. So when I was in Orlando, I was thinking about moving to Orlando
Hmm.
potentially back in March of this year. And I tried seeing different friends and that I'd met when I was there earlier, and it felt good, but then it didn't feel good. And that for me is
Hmm.
like a pretty good okay.
Yeah.
But I had the clear feeling, and it was about a 10-hour drive from Florida to North Carolina. It was about 7 p.m. And I didn't have like a lot of I didn't well, let's go back a little bit. I was going to hang out with a friend maybe for another day, but
Hmm.
I just wanted to go see her because I knew she was close by, but she wasn't that close by. She was about an hour out of the way. But then when I got to her house, she had such joy, and she's like, come on in. And she made me this amazing meal, and we just had a great, amazing talk. And it was
Hmm.
just crazy. And yeah, she was ecstatic when I told her that I was going to write a poem about that encounter, and she's like, this is so beautiful. Like she was like, when she texted me back, like, this is so beautiful, like what a gift from God, like that you wrote this poem about it. And that poem came out very fast. There's times when poems come out really fast. That was one of them. I probably wrote that thing in like 20 minutes max.
Yeah,
like for
it
sure.
was. I'm telling you, it was out of the entire book. I just kept. I must have read this poem like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, who is she? Who is she? Who is she? You know, and I'm like, oh my God. But then at a point, it didn't. It got to the point where it wasn't. To me, it wasn't more. It wasn't about her. It was the fact of how God led you, and how you worked. How He worked through you to help her. And it was very beautiful. And your book is basically, I know we discussed it earlier off the podcast, but your book is basically about is prayers that you turned into poems, right?
Yeah. Somebody's in the background doing something.
I don't hear anything, so
Okay. Basically, I was gonna come out with the poem, well, the book. I met this lady. If you go to the very back, the special thanks has a shout out to a lady at the lake that I met. So this is for her. I met her, I think, late September. I was on a run and I shared this poem with her, Planning of Your Stars. Maybe I can read that with your audience. That might be helpful for somebody. But I said that to her. She's like, why isn't this in a book like right now? And I was like, okay. And then I started working on it. And then when it finally came to like putting it together, I had the clear thought, as a Monday, like, Dallin, like, this is great. And you have all these different poems from like what you imagine is like my perspective, like God's perspective. You need to make this more personal and put things from your perspective. And so God helped me choose 25 different moments from this journey, from graduating from college when I felt pretty empty and everybody was like, yeah. I felt empty. I never felt so empty in my life,
wow.
To like when I graduated from therapy, we could say, at end of November, was like, okay, things are going to be all right. It's like this like 7-month gap. So I chose 25 moments in between that, some of the highs and lows, like when I like ripped my foot open and had to be in a wheelchair for a little bit, and when I started working at a thrift store, and that day when my roommates just chased me down and told me they were looking out for me. That is where I got the other ones, was it need to be more personal. And that was where really a lot of the healing, I guess, that the book has provided really happened, was with writing those. So it's 25 poems of me talking to God about these things and thanking him, slowly getting more into thanking him, be like, wow, this is crazy. Like when I got to go to Alaska, for example, like that was amazing. And then him talking back to me. And I'm starting work on the next one. I started work on the next one already, and so I'm excited for that. But that
I can't wait to read it. I cannot wait to read it. You got to make sure. Let me know when it comes out, because I definitely have to read it. I love this. I love this. How do you believe poetry can be a powerful tool in connecting individuals to their spirituality and their inner selves?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I always have been wired to seek out like deeper experiences. Like I feel like that's just how my brain is wired. Maybe it's the ADHD, but I just always, and maybe that's a lot of why I want to go and talk to every single person I meet, is because I want to just have something deeper there. I think what poetry does is it helps us to put words into things that I guess we maybe can't talk about with somebody else. That's I feel like this kind of a theme is like with the gaming YouTube channel stuff. Like I tell my parents about some of that stuff, but most of it is me talking with God. It's like, God, I want you to reach these people. Like I know that these are just like usernames, but these are names, like these are real people, that you can reach, and so just really praying specifically about that. But I think a lot of it is it's an outlet, and outlets help us let out the things that are trying to get out. So it's just a really beautiful thing. I mean, it's a textbook story, so I'll share it in a quick way. It was end of 2020, and I was living with a couple of roommates in college, and I'm 6'5.5", so I'm pretty tall, and it was a 7-foot ceiling, so we were like in this box basically. It's like this is a really short, small ceiling, and looking back, I'm like, this is one of those times I think we scrimped a little bit and definitely could have spent a little more money. So it was a little place more comfortable. The place I lived in next had like a 15-foot ceiling when I walked in.
Wow.
Like that
Okay.
place was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we definitely learned from that. But yeah, so there was this one day where it was like I was tired and I think I'd just gone off of COVID. I mean, it was
Mhm.
just like a crazy time. And I laid down. It was like midnight. And I just remember having this thought like, there's no way in the world I'm going to sleep right now. Like, my brain is all over the
Mhm.
place. And I know my roommates are probably watching something. It's midnight. We're not supposed to be out. Like, there's a curfew at BYU,
Yeah.
Idaho. But I was like, I don't know what else to do. So I
Yeah.
left. And I just went on a walk and it was snowing. It was really snowy. And I just laid in some of the snow and made some snow
Yes.
angels. And I was just like, all of a sudden I was having a good time. I was like it was like the inner child was just soothed
Yeah. Yeah.
and just completely put at ease. And believe we all have this inner child in us we need to like be
Yeah.
paying attention to and listen to. And then, as I was walking back, I just had this thought, like the hope I can't see. And all of a sudden I just started writing in my phone. Now is where that poem came from
Mhm.
and other poetry. And so that has been my go-to lately. And just overall, when something big happens or I feel really stressed, like, man, there's some really good stuff trying to get out there. And
Yeah.
I'm going to get out my handy dandy pencil and paper and gonna see what we can do with it. But it is
Right.
crazy how beautiful it can be when you can write that stuff out.
Yeah, that's a gift, God gives it to you and that's a gift and to be released. And there's some beautiful things. There's some beautiful things. What advice do you have for those who may be struggling to find faith or trust in their own lives?
I mean, it's a basic answer, but like, God is love. Like,
Yeah.
if you could talk with God right now, and I believe we can, like in prayer, like that is what you would
Mm-hmm.
feel, be like the
Yeah.
full essence of love, and believe He's our loving Heavenly Father. So anything you can do to like spread love and spread joy and make a difference for somebody can,
Yeah.
especially during this time of year, can make a really big difference. And it's such a small thing, but I'll never forget this. I remember being in high school and being in this computer class, my first period, and me wanting to get to class early so I could like turn on some of the people's computers. So when they got to class, like their computer's already booted up. I got this real dopamine rush from it. And that's the kind of dopamine rush I get whenever I leave a note on somebody's car. I just love that stuff. Like, I'll just write like something, I'll just put it on somebody's
Yeah.
car. Like,
Yeah.
why not? And it's cool. So for me, having the ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
having that understanding of myself, I need to have those kind of things all the time because those
Yeah.
those give me a
Yeah.
lot of joy. And I think just for any general person or somebody that's trying to figure out who they are, I mean, well, it really is for me. It's like it's prayer. You can talk with God
Yeah.
about anything, and you can, however you best connect with Him. Like if it's drawing, for example, drawing some stuff out and making time for that thing,
Mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing you can do for yourself. And I believe God has given us these gifts to help us express ourselves, to help us understand more who we are and who He is. And when we make time for that, like, you're just going to see things improve just in general. But it's definitely a tough time. And especially like if you're in a tough season where
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're already getting like pushed into the ground, it seems
Yeah.
like, and then you get
Yeah.
pushed farther into the ground. And it's just like you get all these no's, all these frustrations. Yeah, I would say just start there and include Him in your day, include Him
And
in
everything. He
whatever it
has to
is
be
you're
included
doing.
in everything.
Hmm.
It's important that um for me, I shared in one of my earlier podcasts how I used to get up in the morning and I'd be on the first thing I would do, Facebook, YouTube, this, that. But now that I start my morning off and I'm first thing before I even get out the bed, I say my prayers. Then I read my word. Then I get out the bed. Then I start my day. And that makes my day so much, when you're asking God, when you're praying to God to order your steps for that day, it helps, it makes your day a little bit better, more better, because if he's guiding you and ordering your steps during that day, you're in a better place. I find that I really realize, I believe that if you start your day off praising and worshiping God and thanking him, that your day will be a little bit better. you know what are your future plans or aspirations in terms of helping others and inspiring others to trust in God? I know you're working on, like you said, a new book of poetry, but what else you got going on? Anything else?
Yeah, so the
Mm-hmm.
poetry I see is a very like tactical thing. Like you can use it to create a strategy or create like a intention of what you're going to do with
Mm-hmm.
something. And so I plan to as I've been sharing around the book and stuff, I met these people at the library pretty recently, and like, yeah, man, if you started like an email list or something like that, like
Mm.
trying to like
Yeah.
empower people through these poetries, through these, like that is definitely what I plan on doing. Because I've had a couple times, Shayla, where I just share a poem with somebody out of the blue and it just completely just immediately opens them up, and it's the
Yeah.
craziest thing. And so if I could have people sharing these poems with their friends and
Mm-hmm.
neighbors and having these experiences, being able to connect with people, I think that'd be super special and super cool. So creating more ways for that to happen,
Yeah.
and yeah, doing more speaking stuff. I've started going to Toastmasters, so that's a step.
Okay.
And I love public speaking, so definitely a TEDx talk at some point, sooner than later. And yeah, just appearing on more awesome podcasts like yours. And I
Thank
think
you.
we'd be in a good spot. Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, lastly, what are you grateful for?
I'm really grateful right now for shut doors
Mm-hmm.
and God shutting doors that he knew were not for me,
Yeah.
and him seeing such a bigger picture. Like I've learned you just got to trust God with the long game, because like even if something makes less sense, or like I don't know why in the world this is not working out for you or something, it's like down the road it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm kind of in this in between spot where it's like it's starting to make sense. I understand why this really good job that I literally accepted the offer, it just fell through immediately after that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I'm starting to understand a little bit more. Like, yes, even if that is something I could have done, maybe, just maybe, he wants me to consider other
Other
options.
options.
And so there's that. So I'm thankful for shut doors. There's times I've wanted some friendships to go on longer and they
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't. And
Yeah.
there's times I've wanted other things to happen and they didn't. And there's times I've wanted people's lives to be preserved and they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it teaches you to appreciate every single breath of life you take. There's this person I visited my mission a little bit ago, well, a couple of years ago, and there's this person I was going to have on my podcast, and I was excited. He's like, yeah, reach out to this person
Mm-hmm.
and you can get this interview set up. And I was excited and pumped, and I was like, that's so cool. But like we had like worked with each other on my mission, and so it wasn't like there was like he thought of ourselves on the same, he didn't think of himself as higher than me or anything,
Right.
I might have
Okay.
seen that way. And I just kind of kept putting it off. And then in college I kind of went through some ups and downs and failed a class, and it's just you let this stuff get in your head,
Yeah.
and all of
Yeah.
a sudden time slowly goes away, and I didn't realize how little time I had left. And so I ended up feeling really prompted to check my Facebook about a year or so later after this, and found out that he had brain cancer.
Oh.
And
Mm-hmm.
he passed away, this past November. And
Oh.
so I think it was April, maybe 2021, when I went to his house, and he's like, yeah, let's be on your podcast. And he gave me a bunch of books for free, which is crazy. He gave me a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
books. Here you go. I didn't realize how small of a window, because it was in August of 2021 where he had his first scan. Like there might be something wrong here. And they like got it figured out, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came back worse. And then it slowly just went completely downhill from there. And now
Yeah.
he's passed away, and he's been gone for a year now. And I got to be at his funeral. But it's like it's crazy how there's all these amazing opportunities, and we don't know, like we count ourselves out so much. Like that's just what I want to leave with whoever is listening to this. Like, you count yourself out so much. There's so much that you can do, and don't count yourself out, because I'm glad it worked out how it did, because it taught me to appreciate these things. Like, if somebody's giving you an open door, like, and if they're like, hey, like, I want to be on your podcast and I want to talk with you or something, like, there's a real love, there's a real feeling there. Like, you will learn the difference between when that is not a thing. Like, when there's like literally that is shut to you, that is not a thing. So, but I'm thankful for those doors that were once shut, or not once open, that are now shut. I'm thankful for ones that are shut that are now open. I'm thankful for all the doors today.
Yeah. Well, I thank you, Dallin, for coming on to Sheila's Take and being a blessing. I would like my listeners to definitely go onto your podcast. It is Yield Today with Dallin Canlin. And please get his book, God is Trying to Talk to Me. And it's on Amazon, right? It's definitely on Amazon. Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's kind of funny.
Your website.
Yeah, it's just DallinCanlin.com.
Okay. So definitely, because this is you definitely got to get the book, because if you love poetry, you're gonna love this. But it's really a good book, and I really enjoyed it. And I thank you, Dallin, and please continue to keep doing what you're doing, because you are such a blessing. And we need more people like you to keep going out there and doing God's work.
Well, thank you. And what are you grateful today, Sheila?
I am grateful just for having the ability to be able to have a podcast like this, so that I can bring people like you onto my show so that others can see God's glory and the things that he does for so many people that they're not aware about, and we walk around taking things for granted and not realizing that God is in and out of our lives. He's in our lives. He's in everything. He's weaving in and out, blessing us, and he needs to be recognized more. It's not about us, it's about him.
Yeah. And Lamentations 3:23, I would say this to myself a lot last year. It's that God's blessings are new every morning. His mercies are new every single morning. So
every single morning.
If it feels like it's already a wash or something, maybe go on a walk, or you never know who he can put on your path.
You don't. So, but I thank you again, Dallin, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Sheila. It was a real blessing.
Join me next time where I will continue to discuss more of today's issues. I'm your host, Sheila Dunbar.